I'm Emily. I live in Holworthy Middle. I live in Conan O'Brien's old dorm room. This is a fact that I tell everybody. I am interested in studying history and literature with a focus in Latin American studies. I don't like it when people say that people who study the humanities like just aren't like tough enough for econ, even though it's kind of true. I can't do math, but it's like academic in a different sense and I really enjoy it. I'm writing a paper right now for my history class. Yeah. The people here are like really cool people. I feel like if I'm like having a conversation with someone, I'm like not wasting my time. Like the only time I'm like wasting my time is when like I'm like in my room, like in bed, like not doing anything, like online shopping. But like when I like am talking to someone, when I'm engaging with someone, I like never really feel like I'm wasting time. So I guess it's just like taught me that like there are like many sources of knowledge in the world.
Tell me about the last time you felt awkward.
Oh, like 10 seconds ago. There's like a tradition where, you know, on the last night of reading period, Harvard students, like some Harvard students, especially I think mostly freshmen because they live in the yard, run like a naked lap around the yard. And on that day, I had a freshman seminar paper due, 15 pages, which I thought was very extra for a pass-fail class. I wrote 11 pages because I calculated it, and 11 divided by 15 is 73%, which is a pass. They weren't even 11 pages actually, it was more like 10 and a half. It wasn't a very well written paper, like it wasn't very well researched, but that's totally fine. And so I had procrastinated on it like basically all day because I went to Elliott Fett the day before that. So I came back from Fett at like 2 in the morning. The paper was due like the next day, 15 pages. I hadn't started writing it. So I wrote it for like 5 hours, went to sleep for 3 hours, wrote it for like another 5 hours. Like it wasn't even a good paper, I'm just terrible at motivating myself to write. But anyway, so you know, it gets like crunch time, like 11 p.m., like 10 p.m., and I'm like, okay, I have to finish this paper. He doesn't really tell us like when, you know, we need to turn it in, but we need to physically turn it into like Sieges, which is like this building like a little bit away from Annenberg. And so I was like, okay, like I just have to turn it in before Sieges closes, like I'll just turn it in before like 12 o'clock because maybe it'll be like Widener, like maybe like it'll still be open. But I also want to run Primal Scream. And Primal Scream also happens at 12 o'clock, and I was cutting it really close with like finishing this paper. So I like figure out, okay, if I just wear like a robe and I don't wear anything underneath, my body is still completely covered, and I can turn in my paper to Sieges, and I can like immediately afterwards like go back to the yard and run Primal Scream. So that's exactly what I did. I like, you know, left Cabot Library, I went up to my room, I printed out the paper, I like took off my clothes, I put on like this robe. I sprinted to Sieges, and then, so it was locked, and then the security guard like sees me and also sees my friend who's clothed but holding a towel, and you know, security guard obviously has been working here for a while, knows what's going on. He like doesn't comment on my appearance at all, like doesn't say anything, he's just like, what do you need, like why are you here so late? And I'm like, okay, like please unlock the door, I need to turn in this essay. And then I turn in this essay. It's not even in a mailbox, he just gives us like the room of, I'm assuming his secretary, and I leave it in like right in front of her door, and I like don't even know if she got it, and I might fail the class, but I'm assuming that she did, right? It'll be fine. Yeah. And then so it's like 12:05 and we're like, okay, like it's fine, like Primal Scream is on Harvard time. It's not. So we get there, people are standing around, and they're like, are we like, okay, like why aren't there that many people here? Like, what are they doing? They're like, dude, we're already done. So my friend and I have to run Primal Scream by ourselves. And then we go to, like, the UC event at Felipe's, and they, like, ran out of burritos, so that was pretty sad. But that was, I think, the last time I felt pretty awkward, like, with an adult who knew it, yeah, who had to, like, unlock Sieges for me. Yeah.
What's something about Harvard that scares you?
I think that like there's like some sense of complacency that scares me, because a lot of people are like, oh, like I go to Harvard, like everything will be okay. And for some people, like that's true. There are, you know, people here with like very like rich, successful parents. They're like kind of here to like get a degree, but like they'll be fine no matter what. Like they have, you know, probably like a future ahead of them that's very certain. And I think, you know, even though that's true for some people, that's not true for a lot of people. But I think everyone still kind of falls into that pattern where they're like, you know, just because I go here, it means my life is set. And sometimes I feel like that's an excuse that I experience, like, and sometimes, you know, it's fair, like, okay, like, you know, I didn't do as well on this paper as I wanted to, but that's also because like my peers are very like intelligent and motivated, and you know, it's not healthy for me to think that like I like will be, you know, as like good as I was in high school. And I think like that's healthy, like knowing that, you know, like you will no longer be like as special or as, you know, great as like, you know, people previously thought you were. But I think what's bad is like when people like just, they like forget that like they still need to work. I think it like comes from like a point where people like really like feel like they need to let go in college because they were so like repressed in high school. And that's like just not healthy. And this isn't Harvard specific even, I think it's just college specific, but like when you combine that with like the fact that you go to Harvard and you like think you'll be okay, like it can be really dangerous, I think. And that like scares me that like maybe I'll be like that. Oh, what else scares me about Harvard is that like there are a bunch of things that people like don't know about this school until they go here. Like there are like so many experiences I've had where it's just like this is completely normal. Like once I was in the library and like it was like junior parents weekend and all the junior parents like came in, right? And then they were like taking pictures of their kids. They were like, wow, like they like look like they were on, they're like, people are so studious. And it's like that's not what this school is like. Like people have this idea that Harvard is very like this like academic place where everyone like studies all the time, like, and like it surprises me how Harvard isn't really like an academic school at all. Like it's very much like focused on like extracurriculars and things like that. And people like all the time are like, yeah, 15-page paper due, I haven't started it, and it's like work ethic went down the drain. And like that like scares me, I think, too, that like, you know, this external image of Harvard is something that's like perfect, but like, you know, obviously it's not. Like it's just like any other school, it has its problems.
What are you grateful for?
I'm really grateful for my proctor and that I was placed into his entryway, because I think that, you know, like coming to Harvard, like being placed in the entryway, a lot of people don't care about their entryway, but our entryway is so tight. Like we get dinner every Wednesday night. Like sometimes my friends will message me like, hey, where are you sitting? I'm like, can't have dinner, I'm having pie with my entryway, worthy Wednesday night, you know this, stop bothering me. And it's just, I'm like really grateful for like the support he's like given me and, you know, my entryway. And I think that he's one of the most like positive adult role models I've ever encountered in my entire life. Brandon is like here and he's like a proctor and he like works for the Office of Sustainability, and he like went here when he was an undergrad. He also has like a graduate degree here from like the School of Education. So he has 2 degrees from Harvard, like still lives in a freshman dorm room, like thinks that his like calling, or maybe not his calling, but he's happy like working in like the Office of Sustainability, like making like Harvard a greener place. And like, you know, playing a very like integral role in like shaping like the like freshman years of like these like people. And just the idea that like he is so like supportive and great, and like just like as like a personality, like I admire him so much because he's not one of those people that thinks they're like really special or they deserve something. There's something about him I respect so much, that he's just like this like really like good, decent, great, amazing person who makes great monkey bread, who just like takes pleasure in supporting other people. I think that's something that, you know, sometimes you feel like you don't see a lot of here, and I'm just really grateful to have him as my proctor. And he always has this like jar of candy in his room that I take from, and yeah, I'm really grateful for Brandon Geller. It depends on where I'm walking. There's like one part on campus where I like walk past and I like just like think about like deeper and more meaningful things, and that's when I like, whenever like I walk past the John Harvard statue, usually like there are a lot of tourists there, like it's kind of annoying, especially if it's like, you know, like kind of rainy outside, but every time I walk past the John Harvard statue, it like, this sounds so cheesy, but it like reminds me of how lucky I am to go here. There's like a poem by Seamus Heaney, who's like a Nobel or Pulitzer, I can't do this. I think he's like a Nobel Prize winning poet, and he used to teach here, and he wrote this poem called Villanelle for an anniversary that he composed for Harvard's 315th anniversary in 1986. And he like talks about how like, you know, like John Harvard like walks the yard, and I like think about that poem every time I like walk past John Harvard. And it's like, even if I'm like walking past John Harvard at like 3 in the morning, like as I like go home and it's like really cold outside and the sprinklers are on, I'm still like, you know, it's like pretty crazy that I go here. I'm like really lucky to be here. Yeah.